Welcome back to our 46th episode of the Launcher Farm Show, where I interview Sarah Logue with Team Logue Remax Escarpment in Burlington. In this episode, Sarah and I talk about why she treated her business as a business right from the beginning and why it was so important for her to move quickly and purposefully to grow her farm. Sarah shares how important it is to stay ahead of the competition and how she's focused on continually adapting and adding more value than anyone else. And we talk about what she did to master learning the community and the homes in the area and how she used that to position herself as the expert. We share a super easy way you can recruit the neighbors to help you sell your listings and find you new clients. And Sarah shares how she works each one of her listings in her farm to grow her database and her mind share. Plus a ton of other ideas that you can use to grow your geographic farm. So be sure to check out the episode, like and subscribe, and enjoy the episode with Sarah. Welcome back to another episode of the Launcher Farm Show. I'm your host, Ryan Smith, and today we've got a great guest. It's Sarah Logue from Remax Escarpment in Burlington. So Sarah, take a second, tell us a bit about yourself and why you're here.
Well, I am the broker of record for our cute little brokerage, Team Logue Remax Escarpment. And I'm here because you've asked me to be here and talk about a little bit of how we do our business and how we farm for certain areas and how that's progressed over the years. And what's worked for us and probably what hasn't worked for us is probably where you're going to take me. Yep. We've had the pleasure of growing sort of from, a 2-man sort of gig to, I think we're up to like 12-man gig now. So it's been an interesting ride, and farming's certainly been a piece of it, but we're happy to share whatever we can share to help someone else develop their path.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited about it. I've heard a lot of agents in our area. So you're from a similar area where I work, and they say you're one of the nicest agents to ever work with. So you have that plus your skills. So it's awesome to have you on. I like to dive in and start kind of what got you into real estate. That's always a passion of mine, to find out why people got into real estate, because I find some people have different reasons, different things that drive them there. So what got you into the business?
The easy answer is my husband. My husband always wanted to be like Mr. Monopoly and own a ton of properties. And he's been very successful in becoming Mr. Monopoly. But he was like, this is so stupid. You know so much about real estate. And I had been doing large commercial real estate in Chicago, and I was a business consultant there. And I was always like, real estate agents, they're so dumb. They're so slow. Like, it was horrible. I guess I didn't have a great experience with some of my colleagues in the stateside. But basically he said, Sarah, you need to get your residential real estate license. And, we need to be able to jump ahead on these things and have the information first. And so I said, okay, well, I'd never taken a year off in life to do anything like that. So I just had a baby, and I thought, what am I going to do with a whole year of mat leave? Like, I'd always worked my whole life. So I thought, well, I can write a test on anything. So I took the courses, and it was like, this is it. This is really it. Yeah. So it wasn't that, there was this immediate passion, but I had the experience of moving like large commercial agriculture around and redesigning those as companies. So it was kind of neat to be able to go down to a residential level and work with people directly instead of just the corporation level. Awesome. So that switched in my headspace. That was a neat space to switch to.
Yeah. The one thing I've seen from definitely a theme from a lot of agents is real estate was never their first choice. It's kind of something that they stumble into. There are very few people, unless they have a parent who was in the real estate business. Most people, it's like they fall into real estate. So that's why I always like to ask how you found it. So at the beginning of your business, what did that look like for you getting started? And then how did you kind of get things rolling?
At the beginning, it was just to go as fast and as hard as I could. I found one of my biggest limitations was I treated the business as a business right out of the gate. And I found so many people that I went to for advice or question, it wasn't the way so many successful single agents were managing, their style. And so it was a little bit of a change up for me. And even my broker at the time was like, Sarah, you can't do that, or that's a different way about thinking it. And I was like, well, that's the way I'm going to do it. So to start out, I just went as hard and fast as I could, but I did treat every client as if they were a business transaction, the way they should be treated, and not just someone I went to Pilates with, right?
So for you, farming was obviously something it's a good part of your business. Was that a conscious decision for you, or is it something that you kind of fell into as well?
I can't see you ever fall into good luck like that is a challenge. Like, it's like winning the lottery. For me, it was, I wanted to be the most informed person about the area that I worked in.
Yep.
And that's where I got lucky, right? So I had grown up in the community that I farmed since the very first build. So I knew every in and out because I'd always been involved with it through my family, simply because I lived in the area. So I felt if I was going to be knowledgeable based, that I needed to work from an area that I understood. So the organic growth off that was, wow, Sarah knows every model, every price per square footage, every upgrade, every lot premium. And that was the way that I started the farming, because I knew the area. It was already knowledge collected, right? And how can you expand on knowledge? Just keep it, searching the area. So many agents will say to me, well, I want to farm this area. And I'll be like, well, what do you like about it? What do you know about it? And they'll be like, I'm like, well, you got to have something.
Exactly.
Something's got to grab you there. Otherwise, what's the point? And that's how farming really begins. It does begin organically. You're in the school parking lot, you're at an open house, you're walking your dog, whatever it is, the area, the people in the area, they're going to stop and ask you. Like, I love when people are like, oh, I saw you out walking your dog this morning. And it's such a rare treat that I get to go with my husband and my dog and go on a sunny day and go for a walk. And I love it. But people are like, Sarah, did you see that house that just sold for 2.1? Yes, I did. I did. So you have to have that organic level, I think, and the want, right? Like, if you don't really care to see a neighborhood's prices increase, or you don't care about the success of that neighborhood, I don't think you should be farming it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that's, I've had agents reach out to me and they say, I had one guy, I was doing a webinar, and he said, there's nothing really good about my neighborhood. Like, I can't think of anything good. I'm like, well, then you shouldn't be farming it. If you can't think of it, I'm like, how are you going to sell the neighborhood if you can't even do something good about it? I'm like, every neighborhood has something good. There may be some bad things about it, but it's like, it has to be some attachment to it. You have to, like you said, want to see it do better. And
if the whole neighborhood's so bad, then the price points are great.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So for you getting started, obviously it was a conscious decision based on your experience. Mm-hmm. How did, because I find a lot of agents struggle with becoming that expert. And that's one of the things I teach. I call it CPR. It's community, positioning, and relationships. And positioning is really one of the key structures of it, is positioning yourself as the expert. You don't even have to have sold a home. And I teach agents that's like, become the expert, know the models, know the floor plans, know the schools, know the parks, know whatever. You said you had some family connections there. Why did you know so much about it, and why were you attached to that? Like, how did you get the information?
Because I grew up in the neighborhood, one, and two, I did. As soon as I knew I was going to be in real estate, I went back to, learn all the floor plans, go to every house that's for sale, right? Yep. And go through the upgrades. I over-educated myself. And then I never, ever left the house without knowing what the hottest information was, because I knew someone was always going to stop me. And I want people to stop me. I want people to be like, that's Sarah, she will know. And I've tried to train that into a few younger agents, where I'm like, you should never walk out the door and not know that your neighbor is coming soon, and what they're listing for, and what their square footage is. Because if you want to be that area expert, you need to have that information. Otherwise, I'm just going to call my old agent.
Exactly. And so many agents go to the old school way of I'm just going to send out postcards and door knock. It's like, there's so much more business to be had if you do find out what's happening, know what's going on, when people can call you and say, hey, what's happening with this? What's happening with the developments, what's happening with bylaw changes, things like that. When you can become that go-to person, it just magnifies the effect you have.
Yeah. You want to be the source that people say, oh my gosh, there's a new school coming in. Did you hear about it, Sarah? Well, of course, this is where it's going. This is what grades it's going to be. Every detail, you should be that expert. Otherwise, there's no point in farming an area, because you're not really giving back any information. So you have no value add to the people living there.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you don't know it, you can learn it. And especially with the internet, and I would say, like, it's going to take some work, whether it's time, energy, or resources, like, but you gotta find something that you can, and you don't have to know it all. And that's the one thing I would say. It's like, you don't have to be the expert in all of it, but if it's the builders or the schools or the parks or things like that, pick something, become the expert in that, and use that as your way to start to become that expert. So for you, obviously you knew the builders, because that, what did you do next then to say, I'm going to add in another layer?
So anytime that I would list a house, right, I would massively work that listing. And I say this to agents too. If you have a sign somewhere, think of how hard it is to accomplish getting that sign. So the worst thing I see agents do is they put up a sign, they sell the house, and then it's like, wow, good to know ya. thanks for stopping in, right? Like, it's such a joke. But if I know I'm putting up a sign on the street, okay, well, I either have 5 people I know on the street that I've talked to already, or I know there's people that sold recently on the street. I'm going to let all those people know, hey, I know you bought last year for 1-1. I'm listing a house for 1-3 on the street. Do you know of anyone else? Like, that's a pretty big jump. That's pretty exciting for you, but you must have friends and family that come visit you, right?
Yeah.
That want to see the house. And you got to do the back end too. Like, I've never been a door knocker. I've never been great with postcards, but I would certainly hit the entire street with, here's my feature sheet. Here's my proposition. Here's what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Mr. Neighbor, come help me. And I'd recruit neighbors all the time. Like, and I think people love that about me. The general public were always like, Sarah's asked us to help her. Sarah's asked us for this. Sarah, like, people do want to help you succeed, decent people, right? So if you're saying, hey, guys, I really want to get a great family into the neighborhood, that this is a great school catchment. I know we have people coming from outside the area into our enrichment program. Any of them saying to you, gosh, I wish I could just move to the area so I don't have to commute with my kids so much, right? Like, ask those neighbors for assistance and put your face in front of people, right? When you have that sign, because everyone's going to want to know who's behind that sign. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So for you, when did it really start taking off? Because agents have said, again, I teach agents different. People say, oh, it takes 6 to 18 months before you even start seeing results. When was it for you where it's like, okay, this is really starting to take off and I'm starting to see the results from what I'm doing?
Well, we were fortunate because, I mean, I think in the first 3 months, I must have nailed my little farm area with at least 10 or 15 listings. Like, it was insane. Wow. Like, I just whoosh, I pulled on past relationships. And because I was coming out of a strong work experience, people trusted that I had more business sense on board than maybe the average Joe. But I think, I mean, true farming, probably, I would say it takes closer to 24 months to 3 years to really convert. I mean, for people to now call us because they see our sign in the area, right? Because they see our online ads in the area, because they see us as an area resource to pull on, that takes years. Yeah.
And that's, agents give up way before that time frame, but it's literally an investment, and that's why they call it farming. You're planting your seeds to grow that harvest, but then the rewards are plenty when you stick with it, and you got to work through that. So for you at the beginning, what kind of mistakes did you make? Because that's always something that I like to talk about, because agents they try it and then they give up. I'm sure you've made some mistakes. What would some of those mistakes you made?
I would just say I didn't go big fast enough, right? Like, I kept it too finite. I kept it too close to me. I made it very personable, but at the same time, that I think I left a lot of people behind because I was so focused on one instead of helping many. Right. So I think what you're saying is exactly right. If you're not willing to farm the entire area, you're just going to be a one sign up, one sign down kind of person. Yeah. I think you have to think bigger. Like, I would have, instead of just doing the one street, I would have done 5 streets, right? I would have invested more in, wow, this is why this worked. This is why these people behind the sign were successful at this outcome. We didn't toot our horn ever enough.
And that's a struggle for a lot of agents, is that balance of tooting your own horn. And I talk about in my strategy scope, it's like self-promotion is an important part of it. It's tastefully doing it and tactfully self-promoting, but you do need to promote yourself. You just got to figure out how to do it effectively to not piss off people, but still get your name out there.
Well, and it's still, I find it such a challenge, right? People are like, oh, I didn't know you did that too, Sarah. And I didn't know you knew those people too. And I'd be like, yeah, we do, or I didn't know your rankings were that great. Or, I always thought you were so much smaller. I'm like, oh yeah. So I think you have to, once you have a success, and as long as the success is legitimate and it's not egotistical, right? You should share it back to your community, because the message should be, I want to create this success for you as well, my neighbor, right?
So I want to ask you about competition, because that's one that a lot of agents I find are on one side or the other of the coin, where they look at an area and say, there's too much competition, or they look at an area and go, I don't care and I'll compete. I know for your area, you are one of the, obviously the top in the area. I've coached agents who tried to go into the area you farm, and I'm like, hey, you may want to rethink it just because of the price point and the competition. When did you start seeing that, where it's like, okay, I'm not that there's no competition, but like where you started outpacing people?
Well, it again, that took years. I would say it really 3 years. I could see the difference where there was, there was a handful of very established agents that I majorly respected, doing a very good business in my farm area. Yeah. And I just found that I had to keep offering more, right? Offering better services, better client care. Again, a much wider knowledge base or marketing base, so that I could compete against them. Because in my headspace, and I think this is again where agents get stuck, they're like, oh my God, but that's, Marg Morin, or that's, Drew Wolcott. How am I going to compete? But you have to look at what you can contribute to a client to make your offering a little bit different so that you can compete. But I think the real changeover for us was probably at least 5 years. And then the challenge is, once you become one of those competitors, is trying to hold it.
Yes,
right.
Exactly. That was my next question, was what are you doing to maintain that? Because for some people, they see other competition coming in and they get cold feet, or they go, oh, what am I doing? And then they don't adapt, and or they chicken out. So what have you done to really stay ahead?
Well, again, you have to do exactly what you did at the beginning at a higher level, right? So if you were changing the game up at a small level, now you have to do it at a mass level. And you have to be prepared to reinvest, right? So we've always been very good at feeding back to our community, whether it's, community events, charitable events, whatever our community's interested in, we want to be backing it. Whatever our community wants to fight, we want to be backing it. And you have to do that on a grand scale. So, you hear all the time, well, how many touch points? But it's truly, there can't be enough touch points, right?
And especially when you do it balanced. If you're doing postcards, it's like you can send too many postcards. But if you're doing events and postcards and community things, causes you're part of it, then you can keep doing more and more and more.
And that's what allows you to farm an area, right? You can't just be the postcard or the billboard or the door knocker. You have to be all of everything. Exactly. You have to be the person singing in the family choir. You have to be the person, collecting coats for your coat drive. You have to be the person putting on a design event. You have to be all things. Otherwise, how are you a community expert? You're just the guy who keeps printing postcards that I throw in my recycling box.
Yeah, exactly. And I teach a thing called SCOPE. It's the SCOPE method, where it's the balanced approach. It's self-promotion, community, online, prospecting, and education. And I teach it like you really need to, it's got to call it strategy stacking, where you layer your strategies together. And that's how you really build a solid farm. It's not based on one pillar or one thing. And I use COVID as an example all the time. And if you were a postcard and door knocker, or you're an open house and door knocker, COVID could wipe out your entire business. But by having all those things like you're doing, one of those methods could change. One person could come in and try to compete against you in one of those ways, but you've got all the other things really creating a safety net for you to really help keep you there and keep growing. So which of those strategies has worked the best, and which one has not worked, or that you've tried and thought, oh, this didn't work the way I expected?
We've always been really good face to face. Our clients love knowing us, and we like being real people. So I find that, the one advantage we've always had is that my husband and I are accessible. We are the person sitting at your kitchen table. We're the person negotiating your deal, but you also see us out picking up garbage on a community day. So one of the pillars that was hard for us in COVID, the pillars of prospecting that you were just talking about, was losing open houses, because our open houses were full social event tours of our neighborhood, right? Like, okay, we're going to line up these 6 listings for this week so that our clients can compare all of them. Our sellers in the area can come in and compare, and they can talk to us about the market. They were full on educational series. I got our open houses. By the end, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so thirsty. Like my throat would be raw, because we didn't stop talking to people about what was going on in the marketplace and how they compared to this house. So we lost that big pillar. And so I was like, oh my gosh, we're not going to see people face to face. And then we lost our second big pillar, which was community events. Like, I think for 2020, we had 113 events on docket.
Oh, wow.
Like, it was like, my husband kept trying to say to me, just think about the money we're saving. No. So we had to pivot really fast, like every business, right? And like, it was like, how do we get in touch with people? So one of the biggest things I said to someone else, I was laughing so hard, is my phone time has massively increased.
Right.
So where I used to be able to stand in front of a whole group of people and speak, or stand in an open house and it was a rotating door to me, my phone time went from like 3 minutes to 28 minutes. So it forced me back into some old practices where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to call everybody and have these like individual open house conversations with everybody.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I said to our team. And we got in people's spaces.
Yep.
Like I was like, no more email and texting. These people are all sitting at home. They need connection.
Yep.
Let's give it to them. So we looked for different ways to connect with people. And we shifted things, right? We did like fun COVID Santa pictures on your front lawn instead of everyone coming to us. It did create a little more creativity. And I think the community was just so excited that we were still a person you could see in a trying time, right?
Yep,
like
exactly.
No matter what, Sarah's not selling houses because she thinks it's too scary to sell houses right now, but wow, she hasn't stopped. She's still here.
Exactly. And I think that's important part, like you said, is you pivoted and you shifted. And the great thing is that there's a lot of agents who won't do that, and they're gonna back out, or they only had their one trick pony and they bail out. So it's like there's opportunities now to keep pushing forward in different ways to recapture the market share. You may not have it this year, but you're doing things differently and you're shifting and you're going to capture people's attention in a different way and keep it going. And other agents won't do that.
And I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's a fear factor or it's a challenge factor. Like every day in real estate is scary. Yeah. Right. So if you're looking for comfortable, you are in the wrong job. Yeah. Like you think of how fast you have to pivot sitting in someone's house.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we were really thinking 2 million. Oh, you were. My comps all say you're about 949. So this is going to be an interesting conversation. Like as an agent, you're pivoting constantly. Right. Yeah. So farming is no different. It's just a larger group of that kitchen table meeting. And how do you keep all the players constantly touched and tangible to you? Yeah,
exactly. As you mentioned earlier about reinvesting into your farm, and you mentioned about your expenses, can I ask you, like, how much are you putting back into, like, are you taking a percentage off from each deal? Or are you just like, how do you figure out how much you're reinvesting into the business?
No, so basically come fall, we look at what our event schedule lineup is, what our print schedule lineup is, where we're marketing dollars and what our charitable donations are. Yep. And then we take a percentage. It's probably close to, I want to say 18%.
Wow.
Yeah, it's substantial, right? But it saves the whole, like I look at the billboards, the bus, and I'm not criticizing, but I think of what people invest in that. And yeah. I think my investment gives a lot more production to my team, yeah. but it also gives a lot back more to my community than me like on a billboard.
100%. That's, you're speaking my language when it comes to that. And I talk about that. Like you have an opportunity to use your marketing budget to make a difference and not just market yourself. And one of the things I preach all the time is that your marketing should be not talking at people, but talking with and creating conversations and creating opportunities for people to give back and creating an opportunity for the community to grow. And if you're just spending it on billboards and park benches and postcards saying how awesome you are or how amazing your dental work is, then you're not making an impact, and you can get a better response. You can spend less and have more business from it when you do it correctly. But a lot of agents default to, well, that's the way someone else has done it. That's the way I've seen it. And they just kind of default to that. And like you said, you watch the money and you know what's making the difference, and you're able
to. And you feel better about spending it on Halt Women's Shelter than you do on spending it on 20 buses, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think if you really want to farm an area, you have to be obtainable and you have to be real and you have to be one and the same. It's like when agents say to me, well, this is my real estate Facebook and this is my personal Facebook and this is and I'm like, when you go to the grocery store, you're still a real estate agent, right? Yeah. Like people are still going, that's Barbara Beers. And like you have to choose to walk that life. And if you're not prepared to do it, then you probably shouldn't be farming an area, because I know when I step out my door, I get like, oh, Sarah, you were in your car for like 2 hours last night on the street. Did you close a deal? Like, you have to be one and the same. And I am like, what I say in real estate is what I do in life. Yeah. So to try to be two separate entities and be like, there's me up on the board, that's the picture of Sarah Logue. You never get to talk to Sarah Logue. You only get to talk to so-and-so. Yeah. I would be crushed if my clients ever thought that was the case.
Yeah. And that's is a testament to why you are so successful as what you do. And you eat, breathe, and sleep, and it's a passion. Obviously, you can tell you're engaged with it and are passionate about it, and people can feel it on the other end. And that's why you are successful.
Well, thank you.
I want to ask about businesses, because that's another thing that I think is an important part. Are you engaging the local businesses? Because I've been preaching it since COVID hit, and long before COVID hit. But local businesses, I think, are so important, and there's such an opportunity for real estate agents right now, specifically because of COVID and because of local businesses, that we have an opportunity to really make a difference, give back, help those local businesses keep them afloat. What are you doing to tie in those local businesses to what you're doing?
We started it before COVID, where we were using all our partnerships. So we have several fronts that we do to promote our local businesses. We have a referred partnership list that we share with our clients. So, pancake makers, plumbers, you name it.
Yep.
And, we've tried and tested them before. We just free willy them into our clients' homes. So we do support a lot of local business through the prepping of our homes, the renovation of our clients' homes, et cetera. But then we also did a Starbucks with Sarah campaign where we'd reach out and, try to promote local businesses in our area that we thought, hey, this would be great if our neighbors knew there was this great new coffee shop, or that there was a seamstress around the corner, or a new dance school, whatever it was. It would be anything that I would track in life, in my day-to-day life, and thought, hey, I have exposure to this. My friends and family in this community would love exposure to this. And so we do an interview with the owner and learn more about the business and share it. And then obviously buy as many gift cards or coupons, like whether it's for closing gifts, raffles, giveaways for that business. During COVID, we've really tried to switch it up to massively promote businesses so people know they're still open. And we've been doing video giveaways. So we had every agent on our team pick their favorite restaurant, their favorite local store, their favorite designer, anyone that could still function in COVID, right? And however they were doing it, and do a video there. And then it was like, share us on Instagram and you can win a gift card to this restaurant.
Yeah.
So it gives us the community connection to what's around us. And it shows that we do work with our local businesses, and the local businesses then in turn work with us.
Exactly. And that's a huge piece that a lot of agents miss. And I talk about the one-to-many approach all the time, and you are able to get in front of their audience because you're helping them, and you can now reach a broader audience, and you can connect with people that you wouldn't have connected with, but then you are also providing value and content to your own existing audience. So it's a win-win. The agents or the businesses are happy. Your audience is happy because you're providing value and opportunities to win and then promote what's going on, and then you're reaching new people, which is huge.
And not everyone even needs, like, agents are always like, well, does it always have to be a contest? And I said, of course not. It just creates a little bit of fun and atmosphere to it. But at the end of the day, like, most of my clients don't care about winning a $200 gift card. They're just like, Sarah, I've always wanted to try Saving Time's key lime pie, and there you are eating it, and it's so fabulous. And if you love it, then I know I'm going to love it, right? So, but I think that's part that agents have to recognize with farming is you can't say your name to enough people to farm an area. Someone else, you need to create little minions that are excited about saying your name to somebody else. And until you have a fleet of people going, hey, you said you were listing your house. Sarah Logue sold us this house 5 years ago. Are you calling Sarah? You need those people in the streets, right?
100%.
So don't leave them behind. You sold their house. You should still be talking to them every year of your life, because they're going to get you into your next house.
I would say at the time of this recording, I'm single. That the best way to be introduced to someone is to have someone else introduce you. If I walk up and say, I'm Ryan, I walk up to a woman and she says, oh, you're a creep. If someone else says, Ryan's awesome. And it's the same with our business. It's like, if we can get someone else to do that introduction for us, if we can get those people preaching what we're about and saying our praises, it's so much easier. And when you do that in your farm, it's even that much easier, because they live in that area, they work in that area, they serve that area. And then you now are just get passed through the community that much quicker, and you can grow the business easier that way.
Yeah. And don't forget to thank those people profusely, because they don't realize what impact they're making. I would say, when I had the opportunity to work in the States, it was easier. People were better promoters, more outgoing, right? Canadians are more conservative. They don't want to pass judgment. They don't want you to hold them if something goes wrong, right? So you have to remind your past clients why you are so successful and what you do well. And that has to be part of your farming. I think so many people go, okay, that one I'm done. Let's get to the next one. Well, no, you're never done that one. you need to stay working on that one. So farming has to have layers of past clients, current clients, and future clients.
Yeah, exactly. And it just keeps changing. It shifts because people move out, you people moving in, you got constantly. It's an evolution, and it just keeps growing.
Yeah.
So speaking of evolution, that ties in nicely to the next question is, where do you see things happening for you in the next couple of years for your business? Are you pivoting things? Are you keeping things the same way? Obviously with COVID, it's changed a bit, but where do you see the direction happening?
I think we're in a growth cycle. And I mean, we are in a bit of a strange growing year under COVID. We are trying to expand and sort of add some tiers to our business, whether it's inside sales, then our sales rep, then sales manager, then, broker. We're trying to do that so that we can add more back to our clients. And I feel like if I'm running the big picture business, it gives me more opportunity to come up with the ideas that are going to allow more creativity, more flexibility for our clients, more opportunities. If I'm trying to manage, one of my agent's deals it's going sideways, I'm not thinking big picture for our clients, and I'm not thinking big picture for our community. So we have to expand somewhat so that I can do what I do so well at a bigger level. And that's going to be layering in those different inside sales and sales manager levels. And we're about 65% of the way there. We're only missing really one pivotal person to be able to grow.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And how much is going to be geared towards putting it back into your farm or versus your whole business as a whole?
I think I'll always start with the farm because that's where I'm the most passionate.
I like to hear that. That's good.
Yeah. And I'm always a little more hesitant when I spread too thin, right? Because I don't want to be just the next idiot coming to your door pretending to know that I know everything. I actually want to know everything. So I have to have a lot of information. I'm a big research fanatic. And I want to be able to, you can fireball questions at me and I'm going to have all the answers. And until I'm at that point, I won't pretend to beat out a Finny in her backyard.
Yeah, that's awesome.
No.
So I want to ask you before we wrap up about saturation and how much business you can get, because again, for a lot of agents, they keep they double down on things or they spend the money in the wrong place. Have you hit that point, or where did you start seeing that point where it's like, okay, I'm spending more money and I'm not getting the same returns for you? And are you close to that? And where do you see that going in the future?
I do think we're close to that. I think the only thing that changed that allowed us to not hit that wall was that prices jumped so much during COVID that it allowed a natural expansion without expansion in work. Right? When we saw the prices climb, it was like, oh, wow, like, look at where our numbers are. It was so amazing. But I'm in my head, I'm going, yeah, that's only because, prices went here, not because volume went here. So we do use our farming area to spread organically and quite naturally into the biggest feeder neighborhoods into our primary neighborhood. Right. So we've been shifting into those other neighborhoods to become a more of a control hand in those areas and try to provide the same service for the people all racing into our neighborhood. Because I'm honestly tired of sitting in meetings, and I sat in one last night and they're like, we're so sorry we didn't call you when we sold. We should have called you when we sold. And I'm like, yeah, because then you would be able to afford the house you want to afford, right? Like, or we wouldn't be in this shitty situation where I'm fixing all your back end problems.
Yeah.
Which, I'm always happy someone calls us when they have a problem because I do want to get them out of it. That's my number one driver is, making sure people create success for themselves. So I do think naturally we will hit a ceiling based on the fact that we primarily sell the family home, and the family home is a 15-year purchase, right? So we're hitting that cycle right about now, and now I got to bump it out.
And you brought up a good point, is that now you're moving to the other areas. And what I find a lot of mistakes that agents make is that they try their farm, don't get their systems in place. They don't really hit the amount they can get out of there, and they start expanding. It's like, man, you've left a lot of business on that table, and you would have got more business by focusing on that and getting the overflow business versus spreading yourself out too thin without really having it figured out. And you've obviously tracked, tested, and figured out what's worked. Now you're able to really double down in those other areas, and you'll grow a lot quicker than
it goes back to that basic rule of thumb. If you're listing on a street, work that street, right? If that's all you can handle in that moment, then make yourself the expert on that street. But if you're going to try to work, 2,500 homes and you're not getting the result you like, and then you go to the next 2,500 homes, exactly. Why are you going to have results there?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not. Right.
Exactly. So that ties in perfectly. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I just think that too many people look at, this agent's doing so well in this area, I'm going to do so well in this area. And, And maybe you will, but why not reach out to the agent who is doing well in the area and ask them how they're doing it? I mean, I remember some of my first calls in the business were to like Peter Hogertrop and Drew Wolcott, and I just grilled them like, how did you do this? What were you doing? Right. And then I worked some of their open houses to see what they were doing. Right. I said to someone else today, like, you don't have to be the first through the winning line. Like, look at what other people have done and see what's going to fit for you and what's not going to fit for you. And don't be scared to call on agents and ask them.
Yeah, exactly. So that ties in perfectly to the last wrap up section of what's one piece of advice you would give if someone is thinking about getting into starting a farm or breaking into a new area. What piece of advice would you give? Be
a knowledge expert. Know your stuff, right? If there's an anomaly, find out why. I mean, my staff still call me, and how often I call freaking agents and say, hey, you sold for like 2.8 on a street that I've never broken 1.9. What the heck did you sell? Yeah. Was there like the garage full of drums? Like, give me the information. Your agents too often think of as each other, I think, as competitors. We're colleagues fighting a big fight, trying to create success for everyone. Reach out, ask 100%. People, right? And get the knowledge so that you know what you're talking about. Don't pretend. Yeah,
exactly. And it makes your job easier too when you're working with people who do want to know that and not coming in as trying to butt heads. It's like, if we're all trying to get ahead and help everyone and make it easier, then it's a win for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. If we all know there's a grow up in the basement, we'll get through it.
Exactly. So we always wrap up with the best book segment. So what's one book that's either had a huge impact in your life or made a change in your life, or that you think would make an impact in our viewers' life?
Malcolm Caldwell is anything. I would read anything. The Tipping Point, brilliant book. I've probably read it 3 or 4 times, but I'd say anything that he's written in the last decade is worth the read. Other than that, my favorite educational book, there's a leadership book, and I can't even think of the name of it, but I think it's called Why Lead, and it's very, very well written. It's a dated book, but okay. I'll get you the name of it. It was awesome. Very, very good. Other than that, there is a ton of, and I mean, I'm a Remax red, white, and blue through and through, but there is some good resources that KW, I've definitely leaned on them over the years for some of their organizational and structural techniques. They do write out a brilliant plan. Awesome.
Well, I'll put those in the show notes so people can check them out. So thank you for being on. Really appreciate it. How can our viewers check out what you're up to and connect with you if they'd like?
teamlogue.ca anytime, or just call me.
Awesome. And we know you are approachable and easy to get a hold of, so that's good.
I am.
Thank you, Sarah, for being on here. I really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, your information, and passing that wisdom on to our viewers. And I hope that they're inspired and can have a awesome, exciting career like you've had, and continue on the passion that you have for it as well.
I hope it for them as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for checking out today's episode. If you'd like more videos like this, be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our Facebook page and our other social media channels. Looking forward to bringing you more great content like this, and happy farming.